Hey, I'm Bree, and this is my sister Jules. I'm an English teacher.
And my foot is really itchy.
And together we drink wine as we unpack the brilliant writing of the hit 90s sitcom Boy Meets World. Cheers!
Cheers!
All right, what are we drinking?
Today we're a little bit fancy with a Prosecco by Mio Netto. Yeah, I broke out my little champagne flute for this.
It's like really sweet. Ooh.
You think? I don't think so.
Can't say I'm a fan, but there is a taste, and I'm gonna figure it out. Ooh, what's that taste? I'm getting Target flip-flops.
Oh, what color are they?
That's a really good question. I mean, the first color that came to my mind was orange, but I think that's because the bottle is orange. No, like it's another fake taste that's very much like Scream Mask in style, but it's not Scream Mask.
I was gonna say that smells like plastic.
Right?
Doesn't taste like plastic. Maybe this will help or not. The notes are of a golden apple, white peach, and honey.
No, it tastes. Oh, you know what it is?
Well,
it's
tastes like a public restroom.
Oh, this I figured it out. This tastes like Arm & Hammer baking soda.
Again, I don't even question you because I know you've had it.
So we watched season 1, episode 18. It's a Wonderful Night. Synopsis provided by Disney Plus was Alan and Amy go out for the evening. Wah, wah.
That's it.
That's it. That's all it says. So I added, while Feeney babysits, Corey and Sean watch a rated R film and Eric drives without a license. Air date, March 11th, 1994. Written by Susan Estelle Jansen. She also wrote Santa's Little Helper and Killer Bees. It was directed by David Trainer, as always. Viewers, 19.3 million.
My first impression of this was Eric was both not an idiot and also very much an idiot in this episode. When Eric is talking to Corey about, Corey's like, I got this R-rated movie I'm going to watch. And his brother's like, well, if you're going to do the crime, be prepared to do the time. And has this advice for him. And Corey's like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I could learn from you. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like Eric has got some wisdom in this episode. And then he goes and F's it all up by doing something real stupid.
I like Eric because he's complicated. He's got a heart of gold, but he also is kind of sneaky. My first impression is we get our first Feeney from Eric, but it's not. It's so subtle. It's so subtle. It's not really. I deem it thus, but it is not that.
It's the precursor.
It's exactly. It will evolve into that, but I feel like this is the first time that Eric sees Feeney through the kitchen window door, and he's like. And then he opens the door and he's like, Mr. Feeney. And he just says it normally, but it's going to evolve. This is the big bang of that.
And I think it's the start of their newfound relationship, which is Eric is the annoying neighbor.
We start off in school in the cafeteria. Sean and Corey are talking about how Corey's parents are leaving for the night and Judy, Queen of Zits, is going to be their babysitter. Corey says, we'll tell her she's looking especially broken out this evening, so she'll spend all night in the bathroom squeezing her face, leaving us free to watch their rated R movie.
I was a little offended as somebody who had serious acne issues.
Turns out that Sean has this rated R super violent flick that he's hiding in a Barney sleeve. The name of the flick is I'm Blowing Up Your Head, Part 6, Stumpy's Revenge.
I love that the title is the active act of doing that thing. I am blowing up your head. Not I will blow up your head.
I thought Stumpy died in part 5. And Sean's like, well, that's why he wants revenge. So we're in the bedroom and Corey has the tape and it's in the Barney sleeve. So Eric's like, ooh, Barney does the ABCs. I don't want to ruin the ending for you, Cor, but Z. I thought that was funny. And Corey's like, you totally underestimate me, open it. And Eric's like, oh, Stumpy's Revenge, not bad for a baby scam. And Corey's like, this is not a baby scam. This is a totally major scam. Stumpy's Revenge is rated R for violence. And Eric's like, yeah, maybe for a little nudity. And Corey's like, yeah, but we can fast forward over that.
So wholesome.
So much. In our society, I feel that nudity is considered more scandalous in a way in some situations than violence. Yeah. Which is so messed up if you really think about it. If you think down to the core, if you deconstruct that.
Tell me more.
Well, violence is violence. You're inflicting pain on someone else. Whereas like the core of like what nudity is that it's like sex, and sex is pleasure, right? And one is pain and one is pleasure, and one is killing other people, taking their lives, and then the other is like providing them with pleasure.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, Corey doesn't have any desire to see any nudity. He just wants to see people's heads blown up. Do you remember ever watching any rated R movies when you weren't supposed to?
I was going to ask you the same question.
Yeah.
I don't remember sneaking any movies. Like, I don't think I ever watched a movie where I was like, oh, mom and dad didn't know. But I started watching scarier movies like around Corey's age, or maybe a little bit older. I remember I went to a sleepover and we watched this really bad movie. Like, it was just a throwaway horror film. I think it was called Tamara. It was kind of like Jennifer's Body type, like woman comes back from the dead and kills all these people.
Sounds like. Yeah.
And I was horrified. I'm just so scared. Not old enough to watch it. And then there was a time in my life, like early high school, where, you know, I went to the same friend's house like almost every weekend with a bunch of friends, and we would watch every single Saw movie, which there's like 10 of them, and I hated every single one because I hate that kind of violence, like the gore violence.
Yeah.
That's not my thing. As a horror movie lover, that's on the bottom of my list. And every time, hated it. Nightmares for days. Hated it.
So why did you do it?
Peer pressure, obviously.
Yeah. And no, I never watched any of that stuff because I had no desire to. I was like, no, I want to sleep.
There's something that happens in my brain when I experience something that is creepy, which is why I don't like gore films, because that's not creepy. That's just like violent and like gross and stuff. But like creepy, like psychological, or just like a creepy visual, I love that stuff. I can't get enough. That's why I love like paranormal films and just like psychological thrillers. Like that stuff is my jam.
So funny because you have tryptophobia though.
Yeah.
So you can handle all this creepy stuff, but you can't handle like holes.
Yeah. Holes aren't creepy though. They're just disgusting. I want to gouge my eyes out when I see a porous thing.
Who's that director who does the, Midnight Mass and Blind Manor and
Flanagan, Mike Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan. Love. That's
Yes.
exactly where I want to live always. No jump scares. So this is where we get the line that you said that Eric says to Corey. So, all right, you know, it's a major scam, but hey, if you're going to do the crime, be sure you're ready to do the time. And Corey's like, what do you mean? And Eric says, why do you think mom and dad are letting me get my driver's license with Jason and his brother instead of with them? And Corey says, because they hope you'll get lost and never come back. And Eric's like, no, because they trust me. See, I've spent my whole life putting deposits in the trust bank, and today I'm cashing in. Corey's like, what trust bank? You get busted all the time. And Eric's like, just a few carefully selected times. Enough so mom and dad think they're doing their job.
That's a little scary. If you have a kid that's doing that, that's like
Right?
wicked smart in a scary way.
I totally agree. I was like, wow, that's really psychopathic, actually.
Yeah.
Kind of sociopathic. So Alan enters. He's wearing, ding, 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 my fashion moment, which is like jeans and a belt with a t-shirt with a collared shirt over it, buttoned not all the way up, and then a blazer. And I thought he looked awesome.
He looks like he teaches humanities.
He totally does. He actually dresses exactly like our humanities department at my school that I work at. And then Amy basically tells him no, that he has to put on a suit because they're going to some fancy event tonight. Then we're back in the living room after a time lapse, and Jason comes in, and it is revealed that Eric did not get his driver's license. He failed the driver's test. So I don't know. I guess Eric moved when he wasn't supposed to and immediately failed, which they're really strict like that. I didn't fail, but I got a point off because when I came up to a T, I asked the person, which direction should I go? And she just looked forward and was like, read the sign. And it was a one-way. And I was like, oh no. So yeah, I didn't fail, but it was like very close. But
Yeah.
you can fail for something as small as that.
As you should.
Yeah.
Some people are terrible drivers. I got 100 on the written test, and then I passed on my first try.
Yes. So phone rings, and it's one of the girls that Jason and Eric want to take out on dates tonight. Hence why Eric was so sure that he was going to pass his driver's test that he planned dates where he was going to pick up these girls in his car. Eric picks up the phone and he starts to be like, hey, Tracy, yeah, there's some bad news. And he starts to tell her the truth. Jason leaps over the couch, grabs the phone out of Eric's hand and is like, Tracy, how you doing? Bad news. Cash Machine only gave us $200 for a date tonight. What are you doing in the 90s on a date for $200?
Among 4 people, yeah, that's a lot of money.
And then he's like, I'll pick you up at 8. Eric's like, what are you saying to her? We cannot pick them up until I take the driving test again in 2 weeks. And Jason goes, that's just logic. That's getting in our way. So Alan comes downstairs. So Eric's now about to tell Dad the truth. And Jason again cuts him off. And he says, he got off to kind of a rocky start. But, once he had his foot on the accelerator, next thing you knew, it was over. So he didn't technically lie in the words that he said.
Yeah.
And, this is where we see Eric's heart of gold. Like, he is a good person. He's like, Jason, I have to tell them. And Jason's like, yes, you do. That is the right thing to do. And tomorrow is the right day to do it. And then Amy comes down, and I hate the way that Jason talks to her. He's like, oh, too young to be a mom, too pretty to be in real estate.
Cringe.
I don't like it. I don't like when we normalize this way of talking about women.
Yeah. I don't like that. And especially from a teenager, gross.
It's gross, right? And then Eric asks, why are you sucking up to my mom? And Jason's like, have you seen my mom? I feel like I've seen this in old TV shows a lot where there was this like pride in having a pretty mom. Mm-hmm. And there was like this, oh, my mom's so gross. My mom's so ugly. Like, I just hate it. I hate it.
Yeah.
Because there's no expectation like that on men. Alan dangles his car keys and says, son, I was thinking somebody in this house should have a good time tonight because he doesn't want to go to this event with Amy. And Eric's like, those are your car keys. And Alan's like, mm-hmm. And Eric's like, you could see him struggling. He's like, Dad, And then Jason grabs the car keys, tosses them backwards over his head into Eric's hands, which that was so smooth.
Yeah, that was great. I loved that.
He caught him like he wasn't even trying to catch him. Like
he wasn't even looking. They fell into his hand.
And Jason's like, Eric, his car keys. Your father is giving you his car keys, Someday I hope I can be half the man you are. And Alan goes, well, right now you are. He's like looking down at him. It was great. So Amy and Alan leave. Eric and Jason go into the kitchen and he's like, I'm not lying to my parents, Jason. I mean, they trust me. They gave me life. They deserve better from me. And Jason's just like, okay, you got that out of your system? And Eric's like, yeah, what's the plan?
Oh, he got over that real quick.
So they decide that they're going to still go on the date. Judy calls and she says that she can't make it. There's some sort of crisis. Eric's like, oh, what are we going to do? How are we going to find another babysitter in 15 minutes? And then he sees Eric through the window and we get our first Feeney moment where he walks out onto the patio and he's like, Mr. Feeney. Feeney's like, hello, Eric. So he asks him if he can help out, if he can babysit. And Feeney doesn't really agree. And then Eric's like, name your price. And Feeney's like, manual labor, spreading manure in my yard for the next 4 Sundays. Eric goes, 2 Sundays. Feeney goes, 5. Eric goes, done.
So and silly. There's the idiot.
Exactly.
He's back.
So now we cut to the living room. Feeney is now babysitting. I have a bone to pick with this scene and whoever choreographed it. It makes no sense. So Feeney is sitting at the little tiny tea party table, like the kids' table with Morgan. And there's a funny moment, which I'll get to, but Corey and Sean are sitting on the couch right next to them watching this rated R movie. And we're supposed to believe that Feeney can't hear it or see it at all?
Yeah. Like, I know. I don't know why they didn't put them in a different room. I think they were trying to kind of create the separation by like not showing both scenes together. Like the cameras are pointing at the tea table or they were pointing at the couch. But it's like, we all know it's the same room. It's right there.
Yeah. We've been living in this house, guys, for weeks now. We're on episode 18. We know. He's right there. What are you doing? And there's a TV in Corey's room. And if this is supposed to be a show for kids, you know that the kids would be up in the room watching it. Of course.
Yeah.
I hated this. But anyway, so Morgan is trying to get Feeney to put on her floppy hat. And Feeney goes, no, Morgan, now. Here, I really must draw the line. I will not put on your floppy hat. Morgan does her little lip thing where she pushes out her bottom lip because it's cute and it gets her what she wants. And he goes, now that's not going to work. We had an agreement. I was to get dressed up and come to your tea party. And then you were to leave me in complete peace so that I could grade my papers. Now, I have upheld my part of the bargain. I have festooned myself in costume jewelry. I have swilled your faux tea. Now I insist that you keep your end of the bargain. Hilarious.
No, hilarious. I love that he will treat anybody like an adult at all times. I love that. Festooned. If he had a kid or a grandkid, they would be the most like well-educated, well-spoken, well-read people.
And they would be my favorite child in the world. I love children with big vocabularies. So then she starts to fake cry. And I don't know if she's supposed to fake cry or if she's supposed to real cry, young child actor. But he says, all right, give me the hat. Happy now. So he puts on the hat. Audience laughs. I did feel like the audience reactions in this scene were a little bit forced. Like when they were like, aww. I was like, that was a little much, guys.
I didn't notice it in this episode.
So we get to the funniest line in this entire episode that I missed when I was watching it. And I think most people probably missed it because it was kind of hard to hear. But when I was going over the script, I read this again and I literally started laughing and having like a laugh attack by myself in my apartment because it's so funny. So Morgan says that her Easy Bake Oven cake is ready. Feeny says, oh, well, I rush on winged feet. And when he gets up to go walk over to this Easy Bake Oven, Sean and Corey now have to flip the TV back to the nature documentary that they are pretending to watch. So the nature documentary narrator says, so all previous theories of the migratory pattern of the Arctic caribou are shattered by the startling discovery of not one, but 2 Arctic caribou here, where there were previously not one, but none. It's such a good satire of how boring those nature documentaries are. But the way they try to make it seem like it's exciting by being like, the theory is shattered by the discovery of not one, but 2, where there was not one.
Scientific community is in shambles.
Because there are 2 caribou where there were 0.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because I missed that too.
Oh, whoever wrote that line, I'm just like, bravo, excellent work. So he leaves and then they switch it back to the movie. And it was also pretty funny whoever was writing like the rated R movie script because it was also really hilarious and bad. Like the killer's like, all right, college girl in the shower. Kiss your head goodbye.
How do you kiss your head?
And then I love that she's like, no, Stumpy, no. His name is actually Stumpy. So Feeny comes back and they switch it back to the nature documentary. And the narrator's like, after the infant caribou is delivered, the mother licks it free of the birth fluids.
Oh, what a visual. Oh, I'm so happy that we don't have to do that as humans.
Imagine. Oh, I know. And do you think any animal has ever thought like, this is gross?
Yeah, like, why am I doing this? But like are not, they don't have like reason, so they can't quite be like, I'm gonna not do this. They're like, I hate this, but here we go. Let's get it over and done with.
Like, you know, the more you think about animals, you're like, how do they know what to do? And
oh my God, that's me. Every time I see like a giraffe being born and they just like are walking. They like don't even hit the ground. They're just their legs hit the ground and then they're walking. I'm like, how are you walking? You've never seen daylight before. What is happening?
They're like awkward for like 2 minutes and then they're like, oh, I got this. And then they're good. And then they're like having sex and having their own babies.
Yeah, it's like, crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So Corey and Sean are obviously like, ew. And Feeney's like, oh, buck up. You're watching the glorious tapestry of nature. And then when he goes back over to Morgan, they change it back to the rated R film. We get another golden line. All right, buxom night nurse.
Wait, what does buxom mean?
Buxom is like voluptuous, like having big boobs and being curvaceous. The fact that they just use that word.
And it's the night nurse. Buxom night nurse.
Say hasta la vista to your head.
I can like really picture this movie so well.
Right? Because then she goes, no, Stumpy, not the crossbow. No. So you don't even need a visual. So we're at the impound lot and Eric is begging a very large man named Tony to give him back his daddy's car. Yeah, he got the car towed. How did it happen? It wasn't really clear, right? Like how it actually got towed.
Yeah, I don't know that they explain what happened, but
yeah. So Tony's basically telling them, you give me your driver's license, I check that the address matches the registration, and
bada
you're
bing,
good to
bada boom.
go. Yeah. And Eric doesn't have a license. And then the two girls are such jerks. I mean, I want to know what you think about them.
They're jerks.
They're real jerks. So while like Jason and Eric are trying to deal with this whole license thing, so the girls are calling other people to other boys with cars, basically, to pick them up. Jerks. And Eric goes, I really learned a lot tonight. I learned that girls like you are only interested in using people. And you know something? We're glad you found a junior with a Camaro because we don't need you.
Bravo. Good for you. Good for you. Your worth is not defined by pretty girls.
I hate that he's feeding into this whole I need a car to get girls thing. It's so transactional. Like, my dude, why can't you be more like Corey and understand that if you try to seek someone out for their soul and you try to seek someone out who wants you for your soul, you're going to have a beautiful, relationship in your life that's going to feed your soul. And he has parents who, that's not the way that it is for them, where it's like transactional in that way. Like, you have money, so I marry you, or yeah,
where do you think this insecurity comes from? Because it's not an example in his parents and it's not an example in his brother. So I'm curious about where he gets this from.
Great question. No idea. The media?
Yeah.
The society he's in? I don't know. Kids at school?
He seems to be easily influenced.
So the girls are like, oh, they don't think they need us. So they go over to Tony and they basically flirt their way into getting the slip that they need to get the car out of the impound lot. And Eric's like, oh my God, he's so excited because the slip is right there. And then the girls basically are like, wait a minute, aren't these the guys who don't need us? Yeah, well, then I guess they can get back their pathetic dad mobile all by themselves. And they rip up the sheet. They just wanted to show that they could do it.
Jerks.
And Eric's like, no. And he's like picking up all the pieces as they fall on the ground. He's like, tape, get tape. And then we hear a honk and the girl goes, sounds like a Camaro. And they leave. Ugh. So Feeney arrives to save the day. Eric gives him a big hug, explains that Dad's car got towed. Jason's like, we can't get it back from Sasquatch. Okay, Tony with a Y. And Feeney's like, oh, I'll clear this up in no time. Excuse me, young man. It's just so funny because this guy is humongous. And he is totally like a man. like not even a young man. He's a man. And Tony's like, it's Tony with a Y. And Feeney's like, fine, Tony. Might I inquire why you won't release this car? And Tony's like, it's like I told the kid, you ain't got a license, you ain't getting the car. And Feeney goes, aren't. Tony goes, what? Feeney goes, you aren't getting the car. Tony's like, wrong, pal. I already got the car. Feeney's like, no. You misunderstand me. I was simply correcting your grammar.
You.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say it. It wouldn't be me in that situation because I would be too scared of Tony to correct his grammar, but 100% in my head, I'd be like, aren't.
Yep. Yeah. And you would talk about it later in the comfort of your own home.
And Tony says a line that I don't like. He says, I don't need talking lessons from a guy who's wearing earrings. Because Feeny still has on the earrings from playing dress up with Morgan. Why not? What does that say about femininity? Does that mean you don't respect women? What do earrings have to do with respect? What does it mean?
Yeah. And if we are stereotyping, I feel like a guy like Tony would wear an earring. Don't you think?
I do think that. This idea that men lose respect if they wear female items of clothing. Like if a woman wears a
100%.
suit, she's like
boss.
strong and a boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if a man wears something that a woman would typically wear, it weakens him or it makes him less worthy of respect.
Correct. I'm very aware of this, obviously.
Yes. Well, some people don't realize this. Like some people really, like people that are listening to this podcast, like, do you understand that implies that femininity is, it is weaker or less worthy of your respect?
Yeah.
Less than. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it comes out that Eric doesn't have a license. And then we're back in the living room and we get Feeny as a babysitter. And I loved this scene. And you know why.
I know exactly what you're going to say. And I loved it too.
I could not be more excited.
It was very cathartic after all this time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I don't like that Feeny calls Morgan Missy because I hate that word. But anyway, he goes, Missy, brush your teeth and go to bed. And then she tries to do the lip thing with him. And he goes, you suck that lip back in upstairs now.
I loved the way he said that. I was like, you suck that lip back in. I'm pretty sure when he said that, I also went, I did it too. I was like, anything you say, Mr. Feeny. So sorry.
So I love it. And then he points to Sean and he goes, you return to your home now.
Yes.
Messed it up.
He said it to Jason. Yeah.
He said it to Jason. He says to Eric, and as for you, young man, I want you to go to your room and wait till your parents return. And Eric's like, just because you were once my 6th grade teacher does not give you the right to tell me what to do. And Feeny really loudly goes, go to your room.
Woo.
And Eric goes, apparently it does.
The wrath of Feeny. I mean, I get it. I totally get it. He was just trying to tend to his garden and he got roped into a babysitting gig he never wanted. And then like it turned out to be a nightmare situation. Everybody was naughty.
So Feeny goes over to Corey and Sean, who are such idiots. Because then Corey and Sean sit right on the couch in the middle of all of this and turn on their rated R movie. So Feeny goes over and he starts to ask, I don't suppose your parents have any Maylocks in the house, do they? What are you watching? And Corey's like, it's the caribou migrating and licking their babies. Where's the remote? Where's the remote? And the TV is going, all right, fun-loving stewardess. Coffee, tea, or bazooka shell?
I'm picturing this happening like on a plane. How did you get a bazooka on the plane?
She's like, coffee? No. And Feeny's like, why did that man just blow up her head? Corey's like, it's nature. Sean's like, human nature. Corey's like, a rich tapestry of exploding heads. Feeny's like, that's cheap garbage. He ejects it in the middle of it playing, which I kind of forgot. That does mess up the tape, doesn't it? You have to pause it first and then eject the tape.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's been a very long time since I've done that, but
right?
I don't remember taking it out as it was playing. So maybe it was instinctual not to do that.
But anyway, so ruins the tape. And Corey's like, now Sean's going to have to pay for it. And Sean's like, Sean's going to have to pay for it? And Corey's like, you rented it. So Amy and Alan enter. And Feeny's like, the babysitter canceled. Corey, come on, Corey. You're smarter than this. He goes, he killed our tape. Amy and Alan are like, what tape? Sean's like, good move. Corey's like, tape? No tape. Did I say tape? What was I thinking? And I love the way he said, what was I thinking? Because he said it to Sean with his hands going up and down. Like, why didn't you stop me? And also, why don't you speak up now and tell them what I was thinking so you can cover this up? Like, he's like, what was I thinking? Tell me, Sean. And Sean goes, you were thinking, good night, Sean. So Alan goes, he picks up the tape and he looks at the label on it. He goes, I'm blowing up your head, part 6. Feeney starts to explain from the little I saw, and Alan's like, no, thank you, George. I think I can figure out the subtle plot nuances. Amy is like, you smuggled a violent R-rated movie into this house? Oh, no, honey, calm down, Alan says. This may look like a violent film, but at its heart, it's really a morality tale about an 11-year-old boy who's in terrible, terrible, terrible trouble. I found it really interesting that they were like, this is garbage, you know? Like, and I don't want it in the house.
I think I know what you're trying to say, and I agree that the approach that they and Mr. Feeney took to this movie, that was like, this is just like a cheap movie. Like it's not a good movie, not necessarily because it's violent, but because it's just a bad movie.
Yeah.
And they're not really addressing the fact that like, this is a really violent movie and it's like not for the eyes of children.
Yeah. You're totally nailing it. Like it hit me as weird that it was about the cheapness of it. And I was like, wait, but what about like the values that he's learning? But also it made me think deeply about how much of this stuff kids are watching all the time now that every kid I know has a phone, and how there used to be a lot of policing of what kids could watch. I mean, look at our childhoods, right? Like we really were only exposed to this. Like we were exposed to Boy Meets World, Full House, all of these very wholesome shows, Family Matters and Sister, Smart Guy. And I mean, my 7th graders had all seen, not all of them, a very large group of boys had seen Squid Game in 7th grade. And I knew because I had them write dystopian stories that I thought would be based on The Giver, but I let it be open. It was creative. And so many of them wrote essentially a slightly tweaked version of the plot of Squid Game. And they had some details in there that I was like, oh, they watched Squid Game. And I was like, whoa. And I spoke to some parents, and the parents had not seen it themselves. So they didn't know how intense it was. I think there's a lot of that happening now where
I think there's a lot of that happening too, of parents not knowing what their kids are watching, or like the content, like the types of content that they're watching. But I also think that there's a gap between what parents know about the internet and access versus what kids know. And I just don't think their parents realize how much access that their kid has. They just can't conceptualize it because they didn't grow up with it. Right. But kids have the most access, and they grew up with these devices, so they know the ins and outs of all of it, so they can get away with a lot more. And I just don't think parents are aware of this.
Exactly. They can't exactly what you said. They can't possibly conceive of how much content there is and how niche some of this content is. What would you say to your kid if you found your kid consuming something like that?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that, because I don't know what I would say, honestly. Because like, I don't necessarily believe that consuming violent content as a kid will make you violent. I think it would contribute to making you maybe a little bit more desensitized to it, which I think can be a problem. Right. But I think some people believe that like, if you consume violent content, you'll become a violent person. I don't necessarily agree with that. But because I don't know for certain, it's hard for me to say like what I would say to a kid, other than like, you shouldn't be watching this.
Yeah. I think I would have to be one of those parents that's like, because I said so. Like, I think I would be more complicated. I would try to get a little deeper than that. But ultimately, if the kid was like, I'm just watching it though. Like, I'm not doing it. And like, I don't think that it's like, okay, it's just like fun to watch. It's just like thrilling and exciting. And like, I'm not even doing anything though. Like, I'm not like doing drugs or drinking. Like, I'm not even doing anything like, I think I would just be like, it's horrifying to me to think that my child finds violence, especially at this level where it's gratuitous, finds that entertaining. Like, ideally, I'd have a child who was empathetic and like would find that hard to look at and not the best, but I'd be stuck. So I kind of got why they were like, it's trash and I don't want it in my house. Like, get upstairs.
Yeah.
So Alan says, go to your room, Corey. And Corey says, for how long? And then he goes, Mom, I'm your son. And Amy has another like really harsh line that, so she goes, Corey, you're dog meat.
Damn.
I wonder if she's a Scorpio. With their little sting.
Whoa. Do I have zingers?
Little zingers.
When was the last time I gave you a zinger?
Oh, I can't remember.
So I have. Oh no.
Oh yeah.
That's one of my fears. I don't mean to do that.
So Eric comes in and Alan's like, wait a minute, you're not here. My car isn't in the driveway. You're out driving it somewhere very, very carefully, right? And Eric's like, Dad, I hope you're in a good mood. And Alan's like, you lose. And Eric's like, your car got towed away. And Alan goes to Feeney, you are the worst babysitter that ever lived. And Feeney goes, your children are the spawn of Satan. And Amy does the thing that she did last time they were about to get Eric in trouble. And she goes, honey, to Alan, I think you should stay calm. And Alan's like, I am calm. Under the circumstances, I'm the Dolly Stinking Llama. Eric, where is the car? And Eric's like, it's at the impound station. I have $40 to bail it out. And Alan's like, great, but I'll have to drive you down there so we can get it home. And Eric's like, actually, you both have to drive. Feeney finally steps up and says, he hasn't got a driver's license. Well, my work is done. I'll just leave. Amy interrupts as Alan's about to go off on Eric, and Eric goes upstairs, and Amy basically explains to Alan that she's been waiting for 16 years for Eric to get his license because she is the one who drives Morgan to gym class, drives Corey to Little League, drives Eric on a tri-state search for the perfect flannel shirt. She is a very kind mother. She's like a servant to them. I hate that. Yeah. He's like, I want Eric to get his license. I've been waiting for this. And so Alan's like, how are we going to punish him? And Amy's like, look, Eric sees driving as nothing but dates with cheerleaders, open road, unlimited freedom. But I am seeing his driving as trips to the dry cleaners and the supermarket and taking his brother and sister wherever they want to go. So basically, Alan and Amy go up to Eric and Corey, let them know the plan. Amy says that Eric is going to spend the next 2 weeks grounded and studying for his driver's license, and he's going to pass. And Corey is going to spend the next 2 weeks grounded and watching educational TV. And the scene ends with Alan sitting Corey in front of a TV, and the announcer goes, the caribou marks its territory by defecating and flinging its dung. And Corey's like, ew. And the button on the episode is, Morgan and Corey basically both fighting over Eric's time. And Morgan's like, I need to go to Little League. And Morgan's like, I want frozen yogurt. And Corey's like, we got to pick up Sean. And frozen yogurt, Little League. And Amy's just like, how am I going to spend my afternoon? Soaking in the tub or reading magazines? And Eric's like being dragged to the door by Corey and Morgan. And he says to Alan, I will drive off a bridge. I will. And Alan just goes, take your mother's car. And that's the end of the episode. So what are your final thoughts, takeaways? Oh, what was your fashion moment?
My fashion moment was Mr. Feeney and all the jewelry. He was festooned in jewelry and hats. We should also do like a word of the day whenever he has. Yeah.
You're so right.
Yeah. Feeney's words, he's always got something to say. So festooned is my word of the day. Okay. And him wearing the hat and glasses and jewelry. We're
going to no longer do fashion moments unless we feel so inspired. I'm going to replace that with words. So yours is festooned. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. I think mine is buxom.
Yes.
We don't hear that one a lot.
Yeah, we don't. My takeaway is going back to the complexity of this situation that the parents are in about like violent films. Just thinking about the nuances and the difficulties of like disciplining your children, and when your kid does something wrong that you're upset about and they're just trying to understand why it's wrong, like you don't always have a concrete answer as to why something is wrong, and you don't want to be like a hypocrite and you want your kid to learn a lesson, but sometimes you don't have a clear answer. And I can't imagine how hard it is to follow through with the disciplining without coming off as hypocritical.
It's really hard. I have a newfound appreciation as well I think that's my takeaway too. Like I have a newfound appreciation for the difficulties that parents are going through now with the phones. But I think my major takeaway is like, we need to do something as a society about how we are regulating what kids are able to access on their phones. It's
too available.
It's too available.
I'm so grateful that I was just at the edge of that, where that wasn't my experience growing up. I'm so grateful for that. I feel like I was at the tail end of a decent childhood.
There are obviously negatives to having everything funneled through a government agency, or to only have those shows that are being screened and vetted be available to you as a kid. You run the risk of missing perspectives, normalizing certain ideas like heteronormativity and like the comment about, I'm not going to take a man seriously who's wearing earrings, right? Like that teaches kids not to take men who wear earrings seriously, right? Like you run the risk of having lines and moments in shows that are not doing good, are actually doing harm. If we continue to work towards better, more inclusive content, I still think I would choose the content that is vetted over the Wild West of, no regulation, access to everything. I just think it's a powerful thing when everyone, all of the adults in all of the circles of your life as a kid are on the same page. So when you are a kid, if you go to school and your teachers have the same set of values as your parents when you come home, and then when you turn on the TV, everyone on TV is also kind of operating with this same sense of morality and rules. Like, oh yeah, well, if I came home with a rated R tape, my parents would be really mad. And if I did that in school, or if I had it in my backpack or something, my teacher would also get me in trouble. And when I come home and I see people outside of my home doing it, they also get in trouble. And okay, so I'm learning in all corners of my life that this is not okay. Then kids develop good morals,
Yeah. No, you're so right. That makes me think of my upbringing. And I think that was definitely the case for me, where every corner that I visited in my childhood had like a standard set of values. And so it became my norm.
Right. And I think I don't see that as much these days. Like I see a lot of mixed messaging that kids are getting. I'm reminding myself of the conversation that we had. I think it was the father-son game, as we enter into a phase as a society of reestablishing our values and our boundaries. There's a lot of confusion in our small communities about like what's okay and what's not, and what we should be cracking down on and what's not. And the phones is like the biggest experiment, where I just feel like everyone is looking at each other like, is this okay? Like, we're all giving our kids phones, right? Like, but you're doing it, so like, it must be okay, right? Like,
yeah, I think that's definitely a piece to it. It's like so ingrained in us, like our society now, that's our phones are a part of us. And, parent has phone, kid has phone, parent thinks that the kid is using it in the same way that the parent is, not realizing that the phone is access to literally everything.
Yeah.
So they just don't know.
All right, well, that's it for the episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you like what you heard, please rate us 5 stars. You can follow us on Boy Meets Wine podcast. The name of the wine we had today was
Mio Netto Prosecco.
Next week, we're going to be watching Season 1, Episode 19, Kid Gloves. Corey receives a necklace for his birthday and then loses it. Bye!
Bye!